Hi you guys, today we are going to be talking about integers again, but today we are going to be comparing and putting integers in order from least to greatest. And so we're going to be talking more about number lines. And so just quickly before we start, if you think about a normal number line, like this, here is 0, and if you just think about positive numbers for a minute, if you use a number line, you can tell that which number is greater than or less than another number based on where it is. So for example, I know that 4 is bigger than 2 because as you move to the right, numbers get bigger. And I know that 2 is smaller than 4 because as you move to the left, numbers get smaller. And the same thing is true for negative numbers. And so in your vocabulary section it says, recall that on a horizontal number line, the one I just drew, numbers to the left are less than numbers on the right. Numbers on the right are greater than numbers on the left. And then the same is true for a vertical number line, which means it's going up and down. If you have 0 here, and you're counting up, numbers below are less than numbers above. So I know that 3 is bigger than 1 because 3 is higher up. 1 is below 3, which makes it smaller. And again, the same thing is true for negative numbers. So as you're comparing, if you can't visualize a number line in your head, that's fine, but it might be helpful to draw it. And so, for example 1, you are just going to compare 2 and negative 6. So you're going to say which is greater than or less than. So if you think about a number line, here's 0. I'm going to count by 2's. And as you move through this chapter, this section, just in general, all number lines don't have to show 0. 0 is not always going to be in the middle. I'm just putting 0 there right now as kind of like a marker for you. So here's 2. Here's negative 6. And so to compare them, you should be able to say that 2 is greater than negative 6. I know it's kind of obvious, this one's obvious, but if you look at a number line, it's because it's farther over to the right, and the more right it is, the bigger it is. And so if you think about negative 5 and negative 3, this one says to make it on a vertical number line, which I am kind of running out of room. But if you let's put 0 at the top and you count down. So this would be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. If you mark both of these, negative 5, negative 3, negative 5 is less than negative 3 because it's lower or it's below. Oops. Well, uh-oh. because, sorry, it's below -3. Okay, so you guys try to compare. If you do not remember which is which, you read your statement going left to right. So this symbol is less than. This symbol is greater than. You're comparing the number that's on the left to the number that's on the right. And you want the mouth of the arrow thing pointing toward the bigger number. If you can visualize it, perfect. If you cannot, you might want to draw a number line to help you. Okay, so for the try it questions, if you think about a number line, I'm going to count by twos. -4, -6. I should have given myself more room. Okay, so the first one, 0, I'm going to do in purple. 0 and -4. Here's 0. Here's -4. Logically, if you think about what a negative number means, 0 is bigger than -4. But if you want to think about what your textbook is telling you in the vocabulary, 0 is greater than -4 because it is farther to the right on the number line. Number 2, -5, which would be right in between -6 and -4, right there. And +5, again, positive numbers are always bigger than negatives. And so -5 is less than 5, but it's also -5 is farther to the left, so it's smaller. And then the last one, I'm going to do in green, -8. -7 would be just before that, in between -8 and -6. -8 is less than -7 because -8 is farther to the left on the number line. Okay, so keep all that in mind as we move on to the next part. Rather than just writing greater than less than, now we have a list of numbers and we are going to try to put those in order from least to greatest. And so if you can do it again in your head, terrific. If you cannot, that's also okay to draw a number line now while we're just learning about this. But you can also kind of think about negative numbers. Sometimes I think about it as money. And so if you think positive numbers, it's like money that you're earning or how much money you have in your bank account. Negative numbers would be like you owe someone money. And so the smallest, even though it doesn't look like the smallest, because typically 4 would be bigger than 3, but since we're in negatives, -4 is the smallest number. If you think on my number line back up here, -4 is farthest to the left out of any of these numbers in letter A. So -4 is the smallest, but you could also think about it as -4 would mean you owe someone that -4 on this list would be you owing someone $4, and that's the greatest amount of money you owe someone out of this list of numbers. If that didn't make sense, just ignore me. But then moving to the right, moving to bigger on the number line, then we would have -2 next. Right here. -1 would come next, and then 0, and then your +3. Okay, so you guys pause here, try 4 and 5 on your own, and then come back and check your answers when you're finished. Okay, so for number 4, you should have -3, -2, -1, 1, and 3. So it's going from least to greatest. -3 is the smallest number that is listed there. And then number 5, you should have -8, -7, 1, 4, and 6. -8 is the smallest number there. 6 is the biggest number. Okay, so we are going to move on to example 3, which is you're gonna have to think kind of logically for these next few. The good thing is you guys have talked about and thought about negative numbers or integers more than I think you realize. Some people kind of freak out when we first introduce negative numbers. But you talk about negative numbers all the time. Like in the winter, we talk about the temperature dropping below 0. We say it's like 10 degrees below 0, but what we're really saying is -10 degrees. So number 3, or example 3 says, a number is greater than -8 and less than 0. What is the greatest possible integer value of this number? This is actually kind of an algebra problem. But if I were you, I would draw a number line to think about this. It says a number is greater than -8 and less than 0. So we're not even really talking about any positive numbers. So this is what I mean. 0 might not be in the middle of your number line. Maybe I should have counted by 2's again. -2, -1, 0. I'm going to try to put 2 because letter D is talking about 2. So if we mark our barrier here, it says we're talking about numbers between -8 and 0. So here's -8, here is 0. If you look at your 4 choices, you can automatically get rid of 2 of them. You can cross out letter A as an option, and you can cross out letter D as an option because -10, just down here, and +2 up here, those aren't even within the barrier of -8 and 0, the boundaries that we're talking about. So your only choices are B, -7, and C, -1. So letter B, -7 is here, and C is -1, which is right there. It says, question is, what is the greatest possible integer? You should choose letter C. And I know that -1 is greater than -7 because it's farther to the right on the number line. You guys, well, there's really only one choice left, but it says in example 3 above, what is the least possible integer value of this number? So again, we already crossed out A and D because those were not within the boundary. And then if you go look at B and C, -7 and -1, but now I'm saying what is the least possible integer? -7 is less than -1 because it is farther to the right. No, sorry, it's farther to the left on the number line. -7 is less than -1 because it is farther to the left. Okay, let's go down. Example 4. The diagram shows the coldest recorded temperatures for several cities in North Carolina. Which city has the coldest temperature? So if you can just see, looking at the map here, which one is the most negative, the least value, or the coldest, that's great. If you can't, I would try to mark it on a number line. You guys are going to be sick of number lines by the end of this chapter, but it looks like the numbers go between 0 and -9. So again, I'm not even putting positive numbers. on my number line. You don't have to. Yikes. Okay, I'm gonna abbreviate here. So it says Greensboro is at -8, which is, oh no. Okay, Greensboro, I'm gonna put a G. What's that? -8. Raleigh, -9. Charlotte, -5. Oops, that's a C. The last one is at 0, Wilmington. Okay, so then letter A says which has the coldest temperature, which means the smallest number. So that would be Raleigh. It doesn't say to explain, but if you were going to explain, it is the farthest left or least value on the number line, which makes it the coldest. Okay, so then letter B says, has a negative Fahrenheit temperature ever been recorded in Wilmington? You would say no. Wilmington here is at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and this says it is showing the coldest temperatures. And so no, the coldest temp in Wilmington is 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which is greater than all negatives or negative numbers. Okay, you guys, as you're thinking about this, you can think about your real life. As you're trying to answer this, think about in real life when we talk about, like if we're going to have a snow day, we want the temperature to be more in the negatives because that would make it colder. So you guys, try number 7. It says that the freezing temperature of nitrogen is 210 degrees Celsius. The freezing temperature of oxygen is 219 degrees Celsius. A container of nitrogen and oxygen are both cooled to -215 degrees Celsius. Do the contents of each container freeze? And then explain. Okay, so, you could draw a number line if you would like to. Go for it. Your number line doesn't have to start at 0. If you think about this, maybe you count by, I don't know, 5s, and start at -200, -205. I'm gonna run out of room. -210, -215, -220. Okay. So let's see. So mark your numbers here. It says that the freezing temperature of nitrogen is 210, which would be here, and oxygen is 219, which would be right here. And then they are both cooled to 215, which is here. And so, do the contents freeze? No. The oxygen does not freeze because negative 219 degrees Celsius is colder than negative 215 degrees Celsius. So the negative 215 was not cold enough for the oxygen. All right, you guys, that is the end of the notes for lesson 8.2. Let me know if you guys need any help or have any questions.